En este momento entonces voy a presentar al doctor Amir Kassam. El doctor Amir Kassam, originario del Reino Unido, actualmente es profesor invitado de la Universidad de Reading en Inglaterra, actividad que combina con otros como la Junta Directiva del Centro Asiático para la innovación de la intensificación de la agricultura sostenible, el Instituto de Tecnología Asiático de Tailandia, el Comité de Dirección de la Plataforma de Investigación en Agrobiodiversidad para la Organización Internacional en Londres. Asimismo, es también editor asociado para la revista Journal of Irrigation Science y también ha colaborado y participado en organismos internacionales vinculados a la agricultura y al desarrollo, como la Asociación Global para la Investigación Agrícola, el Centro Africano de Arroz, la Fundación Aga Khan, entre algunas relevantes instituciones a las cuales se dedica como asesor internacional. Por último y no menos importante, está participando en la Federación Europea para la Conservación Agrícola y obtuvo en el año 2005 la Orden del Imperio Británico por servicios a la agricultura tropical y el desarrollo rural. Para nosotros es un honor darle la más cordial bienvenida al doctor Amir Kassam y lo dejamos ahora con su ponencia magistral.
Excelente. Como vi que queda ahí, después vamos a arreglar esa parte, porque yo sé que no está por la emergencia.
Good morning, everyone. I delighted to be here, but I will start by thanking a few people, especially the Minister and one Chavez, CRS, especially Paul Hicks and Deborah. Without three of these people, I would not be here, and so I'm deeply grateful. Also, it's very, very nice for me to be able to reconnect with some of my old colleagues, people like Roberto Benson and so forth. But more than that, I feel greatly honored to have been invited here. The title I've been given is a very big one. You know, and we live in the times of globalization. So everything we do, everything we think about, obviously has a global context. And more and more, on one hand, there is a move towards the concern for common humanity. On the other hand, we have dimensions which don't lead us to common humanity. So we have also global conflict in many situations, and we live with a living sort of context with our history, our heritages, with our prejudices, and all kinds of things. A lot of excess baggage is there in the global context. But I, therefore, am going to be careful. I'm not going to be talking on behalf of any institution. So, colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, I will speak on behalf of Amir Kassam. And Amir Kassam is an advisor to Amir Kassam as well. It's not just advising other people. I think one major global context which I think most of us feel every day is the context of fear. Context of fear, of course, some things are well known because they are in the newspaper every day. Climate change, environmental degradation and loss of biodiversity globally, generally, population increase and migration, growing economic inequality. This region is well known for inequalities. There are deep historical reasons which has enchained societies here. And alongside it, there are cultural disintegration, community disintegration taking place right in front of our eyes. And that sets fear among many, many communities up and down. Of course, there is enormous government corruption globally, and there is fear for physical safety. And of course, more and more we realize that we're getting afraid of the big corporations and the multinationals. It should be the opposite. But at the moment, last week, Jose Graziano announced climate smart agriculture. Ban Ki-moon announces the UN program for climate change, or climate smart agriculture. I would rather have just smart agriculture, but anyway, they can come up with climate smart agriculture, and there is a massive reaction. We don't want your version of this alliance for climate smart agriculture. We need it desperately, but the point is that we don't trust the people who want to do it on our behalf. And of course, there has been lack of food security. Of course, underneath we are making enormous progress in terms of food production. Since the early 60s, the world has produced more food than it needs, including for cats and dogs and all the animals and all that. And we actually produce twice as much food than what we actually need to consume. Some of you who are keeping track of statistics, I think you will notice that for the last 20 years, the total area under cultivation hasn't grown very much. Yeah, it's, for example, about 700 million hectares for cereal crops. And we have about 15 million hectares under cereal and non-cereal crops. But there is 500 million hectares of degraded, abandoned land, which doesn't come into the calculation. So the net amount seems to be steady, but we are marginalizing land more and more because of the way we do agriculture. To use Deborah's word, how do we do agriculture? And then of course we have, I'm afraid, we do have growing poverty. Poverty of a different kind. Even in the United Kingdom, 3 million people are below poverty line. But it's a different poverty line. And in America, we've got about 35, 40 million people who are intergenerationally below poverty now. Because there is something we have, which is the system, which does not really cater for everybody, although the intention is to cater for everybody. And of course, we have disintegration of communities. Caribbean and Central America is well known for cultural disintegration. And of course, we now have growing mistrust. We don't even trust our media. We don't even trust our government. And to blanket it all, we have consolidated layers upon layers of ignorance, and some of it is historical ignorance. Professors have taught with great deal of ignorance, and they have produced professors who continue that ignorance. And we have a lot of career professionals who are locked into tracks where they cannot get out into more innovative situation. So, and of course, the history of this world has been that if you fight for me, I'll give you land. And if you got land, I want it. So we have enormous land distribution problem, unequal distribution problem. And of course, there is this situation that people find it difficult to get integrated into the socioeconomic order, which at the moment is dominating our lives globally. Now, I just want to say this, not that because you don't know it, but I think that these things take our attention away sometimes from what we need to know at the foundation level.
And yesterday we heard stories after stories, and it just kept reminding me that what we were hearing yesterday, commentaries after commentaries, are basically a combination of all these things. And then we are told we want youth to integrate into the local culture. We need extension system which actually understands the indigenous situation and the local context. Of course, yes, we need that as well. So we obviously have to start from where we are. And I'm sorry, I'm supposed to click this. Yeah. Now you know Amir Kassam talks to Amir Kassam regularly. But globally, I must admit, globally we have enough resources to feed the world population. But whether that resource base can be useful economically for everybody is basically the remit of development, but also social development. But that resource base is degrading. If I ask people how much we're cultivating, many of you will say, oh, we don't have any extra land anymore. But we cultivate about 35% of our suitable land. So, but the point is that we also are aware that we don't want to unnecessarily cultivate more, because we are in the habit of degrading as a human species. We are in the habit of degrading whatever we touch. It's somehow built into our behavior. So that resource base is degrading, and the agriculture resource base is definitely degrading. Well, just to give you an example, 2002, FAO held a big meeting to discuss whether the 70% increase in global food supply needed by 2050, whether there was going to be enough resource base for producing it. And of course the answer was yes, we have. But we are also going to lose 25% of our resource base by the time we get to 2050. And nobody in that meeting was able to speak about what exactly are the root causes of that degradation. And I'm afraid we got to now bring that understanding right to the level of where you want to operate, at the grassroots level, where you want to see change, impact, and satisfaction in what you want to do in your lifetime, a short lifetime. So I think, having said that, given you that kind of background which permeates my thinking process, then where do we go? At the moment, at the highest level of aggregation, I see that we have two major paradigms. We have two major paradigms. You might see this as a continuum, but I think it simplifies that there are two paradigms. One is the old, sort of the old conventional, and it's not very old actually. The modern conventional green revolution really got going after the Second World War, and it gave us high productivity. But I would claim that it is now recognized that that approach of narrow-based green revolution, of so-called miracle varieties, inputs of agrochemicals, and intensive mechanical disturbance of the soil, has now reached its limit. I mentioned three things. Heavy mechanical disturbance of the soil requires big motors, big power, farm power. We got it from the World War II because we built big powerful tanks. We got fertilizer dumping after the World War II. Many of the chemical companies have still got the same unit. It's called explosives and fertilizer. We had ammonium explosive and nitrate explosive. And that was delivered into the agricultural sector through a program which nobody could argue against, Freedom from Hunger campaign, which is still existing, but it's done its job. And of course we got agrochemicals, many of them were invented to kill human beings or their habitats. So we have an agriculture which is actually rooted in our military innovations, right? So, but it did serve a purpose, and it raised productivity. But it did also create a massive degradation now. But there is the other paradigm. The first paradigm, Green Revolution, based on tillage, intensive tillage. The other paradigm is based on no-till agriculture. It promotes not destruction, but it promotes restoration and conservation of soil and other, when we say soil, land includes water and all the biology and all the chemical processes and so forth, and nurtures, hopefully nurtures, or at least aims explicitly in nurturing the overall agroecosystem and the ecosystem within which we are altering the environment. So these are, I call them paradigms, because it's really, to me, it's like believing in flat earth or round earth. Flat earth needs a system of belief so that everybody can run and live in the world believing that the world is flat. But when you suddenly say, reminded that it is round, the system is changing. System change is required. So we are now basically watching. In fact, I think that for the last good 50 years, two paradigms operating at the so-called global level. And I will show you some of the figures of what is happening. But in this region, Latin America and Central America, since early 70s, this new paradigm has been moving forward, and has been moving forward farmer-driven. Farmer-driven. Things which you want to see more and more of and support the farmer. Not farmer-centered, farmer-driven. Farmer-driven is something different to farmer-centered. Farmer-centered is professionals who think, oh, we should be farmer-centered. Or as I in the university, when I hear student-centered, and I said, no, it should be student-centered, but student-driven as well. So we have the new paradigm kicking and alive in Latin America since 71, especially 71, which doesn't seem to be spreading out to the region, and Central America especially. It hasn't actually arrived here. We have ex-minister from Paraguay, Minister Roberto. His country is now 100% under the new paradigm. Why isn't that paradigm coming to Central America in a mainstream way? I don't know, but we will look at it. Now, both these paradigms strive for sustainability. They say we are working for sustainability. And this so-called, I call the old paradigm, the conventional green revolution. We want green revolution. We want more and more green revolution, but we want what they call non-destructive green revolution. Some people call it doubly green revolution. Some people call it evergreen revolution. So we do want it continue, and to bring social and economic benefit, and now environmental benefits and rehabilitation. But both sides are claiming that we are working for sustainability. But I'm afraid I think that there are enough people now, like yourself, who know the real story. And the old paradigm is now being challenged. Being challenged, like what we saw. We want climate smart agriculture, but not the way you're going to organize it. We want it differently organized. Now those are the kinds of indicators that the old paradigm is now being challenged in a sort of almost a comprehensive way, just about everywhere, from India to even Canada and elsewhere. So, okay. We heard Deborah say, well, this meeting is going to also look at how we do agriculture. We of course want to intensify, and we got this green revolution, and as I said, it did increase our output. Sorry, yeah. And I did mention that it is it's a high disturbance agriculture, both physically and chemically, high disturbance, and of course it requires high levels of energy, capital investment, and while we get high output, but we have exposed soils, completely exposed, vulnerable soil as a result, low biodiversity, and we continue to intrude. It's intrusive. It's not even intervention anymore. It's just intrusion. And it comes, as somebody was saying, it comes top down. Do that. And it is still being imposed, and as I said, it's although being heavily challenged now, including it is being promoted and imposed in the developing world for poverty alleviation. In the name of poverty, we are promoting that, and the poor people can't even access that kind of agriculture. And we want through that food security, and we also want rural development through that approach. And we've seen downside, loss of soil health, biodiversity, reduced production efficiency. In Europe, for 20 years now, our yields have plateaued and the inputs are still going up because the underlying paradigm is an input-output paradigm. You want more output? Put more input. Purchased input. And it no longer works beyond certain plateau levels. It just basically, and it is difficult to even maintain all the gains we've got. So that is the situation, and now the production costs are becoming unbearable, even in Europe, and common agriculture policy wishes to address it, and last reform was entitled Greening of the Common Agriculture Policy. So they're bringing in more ecologically oriented, environmentally friendly practices against which the subsidies or the support is being delivered. And in this current agriculture paradigm, we have been taught to accept a lot of trade-offs. And when it comes to soil, we are told that one of the trade-offs of our modern agriculture is soil erosion. So we have to accept soil erosion. And these are the side effects. Some pollution will have to be there. And I'm afraid, you know, that's the way we're supposed to accept it. And this is the way it looks. I've just chosen some photographs from Africa, but you can recognize, you can recognize that these pictures. If you manual system, beat the hell out of the soil in the name of preparing a seed bed. If you've got animals, you do the same. And if you've got a tractor, you go and plow, yeah, and then you go and pulverize. And as you're doing it year after year, you create your compaction and you develop a plow pan, yeah. And if you are Rothamsted Research Institute, the premier UK institute, you even do research on reversible deep plowing. Yeah? I'm sorry, you know, I'm not going to take 10 minutes to pass on simple messages to you. I just want you to realize the depth of our ignorance. When United Kingdom walked out of the soil directive discussion in Brussels, it was one of the 5 countries, it produced its own soil strategy 4 years ago. And the minister was Hilary Benn. And they admitted that there are 7 threats to our soil productivity. And the first three one was loss of carbon, compaction, and erosion. And then the report ends that we need more research. And he goes to Rothamsted to launch the soil strategy for England. At the press conference, behind him was this photo. And if you open the soil strategy, on the second page, this photograph is there, and the text says, managing soils productively. And this is the photo. So I wrote to Mr. Hilary Benn that night. In fact, my wife phoned me. She said, Amir, guess what I'm watching here? She said, I'm watching the Minister of DEFRA, UK, delivering soil strategy for England with this behind him. So I think that we need to admit that the depth of our ignorance is now enormous, because Rothamsted is funded heavily by machine companies, the agrochemical companies. And I presume John Deere paid for that press conference. I don't know. But I wrote to Hilary Benn, reminding him that what I had written to his predecessor. So we are dealing with now rampant ignorance. It's not just ignorance, but rampant on which action is being taken. And what do we get? We have, as a result, of course, loss of organic matter, which we all know about. Not just loss of organic matter, but to the level where we can't even get fertilizer response. To the level where our even fungus in the soil is disappearing because they can't live off organic matter. They can't find organic matter to live in the soil. And if they can't live in the soil, earthworms can't find food in the soil. They disappear, they go somewhere else. And your soil dies. And that's what happens. We have loss of pore structure, aggregate stability, we have soil compaction. I'm sorry, but this machine, this one here harrowing, he'll probably come twice and harrow and totally pulverize the topsoil. And you get double seal in the soil. And no water gets in there. And you can tell me about 60% green water. I want you to find out how much green water actually is going to be occurring here. It's not going to be more than 5%, 10%. So, and we now have eventually, as I said, this total destruction of biological life and processes which maintains the integrity of the soil structure. This is interesting. Yesterday we saw a picture very similar to this, but these are the final consequences of our current agriculture, and the people behind it are saying we are for sustainability. And you show them these pictures and they say no, this is not true. You're making it up. You are passionate, you are religiously oriented, you are ideologically oriented. And this is evidence, but somehow we seem to miss it. Come to Central America. If you come to Central America, we start with this and we go to this. Right? Yeah, we go to that and we get our yellow rivers, mud in the river. It's not just, sorry, I'm sorry. Oh dear, I've done something. It's not just a small farmer. You look at the big farmers, the big haciendas. I don't know, you call them fincas or haciendas. They do the same thing. Large-scale destruction of our land resource base. Burning as well. And exposed soil, whether you're small or big, you get thrashed by the heavy energy load of rainstorm. Underneath that, there is a hoe pan. It's impermeable underneath. Your green water, your water can't become green easily under this situation. And on the hillside, this is it. A lot of this soil is going to be disappearing on the hillside. Too much exposure and loosening the soil, ready to go. This is portable soil. Same here. The soils are different places, Panama, El Salvador, and even where we have production, you find that there's no barriers. Land stabilization is not an automatic practice. Sometimes you have temporary barriers, and even on terraces, some farmers try to stop runoff and erosion with what they call residue barriers. But on the terrace themselves, they are completely exposed and highly disturbed, and they continue to do so. And this is a picture 25 years ago in the Paraná Basin, number 3, in Brazil. This is where all the tea in the world comes from. Especially, this is exported to England as tea. Ian would know about it. But in reality, of course, it is really millions of tons of soil, topsoil, going over the edge. But I'll show you a picture of what that river looks like today and why it is different. But you know, don't start feeling have an inferiority complex. That tea also flows right past the English Parliament. It's there. This is the green color, and this is the, I don't know what you would like to call this, green water. So what's happening? What is the noise? Sorry? So this is happening in the UK. And of course it happens while the Parliament is in session, so they don't see the brown mud going to the English Channel. So we have this problem, which is a global problem, and this is why I use the word paradigm. We have the wrong paradigm now. It is not fit for purpose for the future. It was fit when we were 50 years ago, what was our knowledge base then, but now we know different. And therefore, this is, for example, almost 15 years ago, Glassord shows the severity of degradation of our land resource base. Our agricultural land resource base, the total degradation is even bigger, as the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment showed, that 2/3 of our ecosystems are severely degraded. Only 10% can be regarded as in reasonable condition. So, and we have a terrific book called Dirt by David Montgomery, which gives us 2,000 years of history to show that the real root cause of our agricultural degradation, the root cause, and there are other, but the primary root cause is our tillage. The behavior of tilling the soil, having plowing competitions at universities, and so forth. But whether you do it with a hoe, whether you do it with a animal-drawn plow, or with a tractor, finally you arrive at the degradation simply because the rate of degradation with any tillage will be higher than the rate of soil weathering from the bottom. So you are on a negative situation all the time. The question is how fast you will degrade. But we have been around here for hundreds of years, so we are basically, whether you do it slowly or rapidly, we have degraded, and we are continuing to degrade, except 10% of the area, which I will show you. That book is a must. All of you must read that book. It's not very expensive, and it's I say that we have large negative consequences. This is a short list, and all the things which I've said. But in the end, you finally end up with higher cost of production, low farm productivity, degraded ecosystem services. Now, ecosystem services has become a word which I would like it to become a real buzzword. People really should say, what's happening to our ecosystem services? And that is a good word, buzzword, because we now need accountability. When we use land, the society should say, but what are you doing to our ecosystem services? My water supply, my air, to my soil, the pollution. What are you doing to that when you are doing your agriculture? What are you doing to my pollination services? What are you doing to my culture heritage, which somebody mentioned yesterday? And I think that those are the real questions which are now beginning to be asked. That if you want to have agriculture and food, fine. But can we do it so that we continue to get clean water supply, regulated stream flows, and so forth, and natural pest control? So, but finally, what is happening is that we have basically dysfunctional ecosystems, dysfunctional water cycle. We can talk about this color water and this one. I'm afraid our water cycles are up the creek. Nature runs it without our help. It's a big solar system. It's a solar system operated water cycle. We come in and we stop the drops going into the soil. Simple. And that drop is going somewhere else. It's not going to go into the soil. So we have suboptimal water provisioning and the regulatory water services. This is a meeting on water, so I thought that I'll highlight that as well. So the question was, how sustainable is tillage-based intensification? So I have basically told you about what tillage-based does, and to me, tillage and lack of land stabilization are the main root causes of land and ecosystem degradation and eventually loss of production system resilience and productivity. Pays little attention to soil and landscape ecological health and functions and to delivery of many ecosystem services. And it's, as I said earlier, it's intensification based on genocentric approach, absolute genocentric approach, and excessive agrochemical, not always suitable as a startup phase in poor development strategies, which you are concerned with. And you say, oh, we'll give them credit, and we will show them financial literacy, and we'll show them how to go to the bank. Fine. And then climate change adaptability and mitigation, I'm afraid the current systems are just haven't got it in them. The resilience to climate change is very, very poor. Not because genetically it's poor, but the resource base itself, the buffer from the resource base, is hardly there. So now we know why we need to focus on soil restoration and soil conservation and water conservation. But you can't get it with the current agriculture. So we switch over to hope. Conservation agriculture, which I regard, it's a name, but I think what we need to do is to understand who are these people referring to this agriculture as conservation agriculture. Agricultura conservare. It's an agriculture which is protective. It's simple, but it protects what it uses. So what does conservation agriculture offer in terms of sustainable intensification? Because that's what we want. Now, we all, if I asked you to write down your objective in terms of intensification, you immediately will say, I would like to be able to enhance my output or productivity, area productivity, yield, or at least sustain the gains I've made. Now, I would also say that we would like to make sure that the natural capital base is sustained, enhanced, and continues to deliver all the ecosystem services which society demands and needs, because without that you can't really function in a decent environment. But simultaneously you want to be very efficient. Yesterday somebody said we only operate 30% efficiency with fertilizer. Yes, You know, all the calculations with rice farming is done at 30% fertilizer efficiency of use. Ask yourself, why do we accept it? Effective rainfall. We heard about 60% and 40% different water. Effective rainfall. Ask any hydrologist. What does he plug in as effective rainfall in his equation? You'll find he says, oh, 60%, 70%. In fact, it is even worse than that on degraded soil. It's down to 10%, 20%. Why do we accept that we get 1 meter of rain and we're going to lose 800 millimeter or 700 millimeter of that rainfall straight through runoff? But we accept it for some reason. Somebody has indoctrinated our mind and our psychology to the point that the eyes watch but doesn't see. So that is the situation. But we would like to enhance our efficiency of water utilization, nutrient utilization, and tied to that our labor utilization, energy utilization. So we want to be efficient. But you also want, these days, we want resilience. Resilience. Where are we going to get the resilience to abiotic and biotic stress? Well, we want that. And of course, as I indicated, we can't just continue to practice agriculture on a farm as if the farm is an isolated thing. It is part of a landscape, as we were told, and that landscape is part of a territory and a region and a big basin. And of course, at every level, there are farm, community, society obligations and needs. So the connections have to be there, and we also want that. But finally, of course, if somebody asks me, then I would say that I want a system which starts rehabilitating degradation, degraded land. Any harm you do to the soil, it should recuperate within a season. But all that 500 million hectare of global abandoned land, I think we should basically now acknowledge that, like Brazil has done, India has done, and we want it back. We want it back into useful production for many other things which we could think of, and make this world biologically incredibly productive for everybody. Just to remind ourselves, this is an illustration, but a block of soil is a very complex entity. Some of you might even remember that you are made of soil, right? If you go to church, you're reminded that you were made of clay. But then we move on. We might say, oh God, keep us on the right path. And you forget that you are clay, you are soil. And you don't say, well, what is the right path here when it comes to soil management? My own origin. But this is what we are looking at. And it is a mixture of physical, chemical, biological, thermal, and the processes in agriculture of cropping system relationships, and it is all dynamically related in space and time. And we are supposed to manage it in a sustainable manner. And you know what? I'm afraid most of us have been treating soil as a geological entity and not as a living, complex biological system. And that's where I think the new paradigm is giving us, illuminating our way forward. That it is able to show us how can we utilize our soil as a living biological entity, as an open system, and not a closed input-output system which we have to purchase all the time, but as an open system. And it sits in this landscape. It sits in this. So this is the soil, and you've got all these dimensions, but it sits in this landscape. I'm afraid I'm just highlighting how medieval the agricultural profession is. That we wouldn't survive for a week if we were operating in the medical sector or in the education sector. Your qualification would be severely and seriously scrutinized. But in the agriculture sector, we, so-called professionals of all kinds, have no accountability, nobody checks us, Nobody certifies us whether you're capable or not. And we are let loose in that sector, and we're supposed to look after the whole of this landscape and all the farms in here, because if we don't look after this, I'm afraid agriculture fails to deliver all the ecosystem services. Including on the farm itself, it does not deliver farm level in situ ecosystem services. So this is how light years we are behind what we should be doing. I'm awfully sorry, I don't want to dramatize, but until we realize why two-thirds of our world is rotting away because of agriculture, and we claim that we have 100 years of agricultural science behind us, I think that we really need to keep that in mind and say, where is it going wrong and why, and how we can start putting it right. And you know, in many cases, it doesn't matter whether you're a subsistence farmer, or a commercial farmer, or which political system you're operating. It's our own awareness and education system which really is failing to educate us about what we need to be capable and skillful of. And having said that, we have a chart which I find very, very helpful. 2005, before that we used to talk about goods and services. But in 2005, Millennium Ecosystem Assessment came up with this chart. Very powerful. It says, it categorizes services into 4 or 5 categories. It says, we want products, food, fiber, nitrogen, water. As we heard yesterday, main product of land is water. You want water, be kind to your land. Biochemicals, natural biochemicals, genetical resources, these are all goods. We used to refer to them as goods. We have what we call the supporting ecosystem services. Without this, the planet will fall apart. Soil formation, nutrient cycling, biomass. You will soon realize the four ingredients of life. This one is water cycling, carbon cycling, atmospheric circulation. These things, without this, so take the water cycle. We interfere in this, and water regulation services gets buggered up. Here is stream flow, groundwater integrity, aquifers. But you want this. You want this from here. And this water cycle, nature runs, and we screw it up by the very first act of agriculture tillage. We stop the raindrops going into the soil. And we then do not get water regulations as we would like, and our wells dry up quickly, our rivers get polluted with not just sand and mud, but with agrochemicals, organisms, you name it, all of it is moving into this. And then we pay enormous amount for clean water. And these days, we buy it in bottles. Yeah, so you can see the connection, and I know I'm given a time limit. So, but where are we now? We are in Costa Rica. Look at what nature looks like. Nature looks like this: diversified, multi-layer, ground totally protected. Oh, vanilla, similar system. Very similar to what this looks like. Remember this one, I'd like somebody to study the climate change adaptability and mitigation of this. And this as well. So what are we talking about when we talk about conservation agriculture? Conservation agriculture is a term which was officially accepted in about 98, 97, 96, when some of us were discussing about the new agriculture, and we said we want conservation, but we want agriculture. And it is basically, CA is in common jargon is a forest mimic, and that's why we're going to hear about our agroforestry systems and silvopastoral systems. All the things which a forest does, including nutrient cycling, we would like to see this happen in our cropping system. And what is missing in our cropping system are essentially three things. Not the inputs, because everybody talks about we want inputs and outputs, but three things which seem to be overlooked all the time are, number one, and I call these the three principles of ecological sustainability of our cropping system. What is missing is, number one, that we really should have no or minimum mechanical soil disturbance by seeding directly into untilled soil. We do exactly the opposite at the moment, and that's fine. That's a cultural heritage, but we could adopt another cultural heritage. Agriculture is agro and culture, so we should. 155 million hectares in this world now are under this no-till system. In fact, the area is even bigger. Secondly, we need to maintain an organic matter cover on the soil surface for as long as possible. That's what a forest does. And using crop residues, cover crop, to protect and feed the soil life. Without soil life, you should stop farming, because nature will stop you. And people told me, I'm going to feed it for my animals and I can sell it. Of course, yes. But we need to now bring a new culture of biomass production and managing biomass allocation for different purposes. And it is being done by millions of farmers. The third thing is keep the cropping system diversified with both annuals and perennials. Bring in your legumes and all kinds of things and keep it diversified. Keep it resilient, as well as keep it resilient through this and this. All these things, if I show you a chart of benefits these three practices offer, you will be surprised. You will tell me, Amir, you are trying to be a magician. So I think that we have a lot to catch up. So the key element is that together with other good agriculture practices of good quality seed, integrated this and integrated that and integrated whatever you want to integrate, you have several resource conserving practices simultaneously creating synergies between them for optimization and sustainability. This is a very short sort of definition, but these are principles. Remember, these are principles like the principles of human rights. How you then implement it in any country, any region, area, depends on cultural heritage and how the society operates. And same thing applies here. How you implement this in different situations, of course, becomes our interesting job. But want to tell you that these three things, I see them as foundation of a house. At the moment, our agricultural systems do not have a foundation. If it has foundation, it is a very weak foundation. So without a foundation, doesn't matter whether you build a bungalow, high-riser, or a townhouse, you know that it is not resilient. But with a biological, this is a biological foundation. All the things which we talk about, integration this and integrated pest management and integrated nutrient management, these all become fully alive. And if I lose one of the integration, I will lose a piece. I won't lose the house because I have a foundation. So this is how I look at it, that conservation agriculture is not a panacea. Please, because panacea is something for all problems. But this does address some of the problems, root causes of our problems. And it can be applied to any system, any land-based system. It's not CA versus the rest. No, you can slip in this foundation. You can install this foundation in anything. Arable, plantation, horticulture, agroforestry. You can have bad agroforestry. I can show you bad, very bad agroforestry. Shoving in trees into bad tilled agriculture, and you get bad agroforestry. But you put CA agroforestry, and you get a forest mimic operating. So this system, this approach any production system, plantation, crop, livestock, and so forth, including slash and burn. We slash and mulch and add other crops and move forward from there. And so you don't really need to go through this degradation. This is how it looks like. That's the Paraguay. Look at this Paraguay. I salute Paraguay. I salute Paraguay. 90%, 99% now of Paraguay land is protected. It doesn't matter whether it's a small guy or a big guy. And landscape which now is beginning to be protected. Mucuna with maize. Maize had been harvested, mucuna, high biomass legume, pumping in 60, 80 kilogram of nitrogen in the soil. It's not full land protection, but it is there. You've seen these kinds of vegetations protecting the slope, because erosion control can be had through minimizing slope lengths and putting barriers. These are barriers which are cheap, very cheap, available. When you get these things operating, you get the same variety of maize 3 meters high. And you got your soil with beans covered all the time. You got another system showing that complete cover. You can grow annual crops. And you've got other systems, agro-silvopastoral, and you have your multi-layer shade coffee. There is very little erosion, I presume, on these coffee farms, and they look like this underneath. So this is a picture I just chose from my Madagascar work on slope, but we have put vetiver grass on either side of this to stabilize the landscape. But look at the CA maize and non-CA maize. This is mulch, so soil is protected and the landscape. And of course you've seen all these things. These are from Central America. Permacultural systems, agroforestry systems as well. And these are permacultural philosophy-based systems. These are very, very powerful. And this is how I showed you this picture, but this water today is like this, because this basin, the whole of it is now under what they call conservation agriculture-based cultivando aguas boa. So this dam is the largest hydroelectric dam the world has ever built. And they protect this dam through agriculture, which has cleaned up the water, and the life of this dam now has increased to 400 years from 50 as when it was built 25 years ago. This is the person, the first South American person who, in the modern sense, started conservation agriculture. And we were at the dam here. This farmer is only a 3-hectare farmer. They work within the basin on a community-based rural development program, small and large. He offers direct seeding services, and his wife has rented 8 hectares for dairy. So small farmers and large farmers are working together to protect this enormous investment costing billions of dollars. So overall, there is a pattern of benefits which can come out of conservation agriculture. This is Brazil. Brazil area under maize has remained the same from 70 to today, but the production has doubled. Fertilizer application has reduced by 30%. There are many, many, many advantages, less labor, less energy, and so forth. And I think I will now have to run pretty fast. But what is it? The more stable yields, less water requirement, because you're losing less in terms of the non-green component. And of course, lower environmental costs and enormously improved ecosystem services like the water quality, water resource quality. This is what it is stands now, the way the conservation agriculture took off. Since 1990, it is 155 million. It has been increasing at the rate of 8.3, 8.5 million hectares per year. And it's spread all over the world now. And it is increasing in Africa and China, in Asia, Kazakhstan, China, even India. They're all now adopting it. And I don't see why Central America, which already has pockets of conservation agriculture, can't start mainstreaming conservation agriculture, because you have enormous experience in the region. All you have to do is to combine with Paraguay, Brazil, and Uruguay, and so forth, and they have a lot of good experience to share. Half of conservation agriculture is in the developing world, and half is in the developed world. So there is no there is no sort of north-south issue here. We can all do it, and from practice, I do a lot of farmer training, every farmer can do it potentially, and they in fact have shown me they can all do it with input, without input, and whatever the situation. In South America, you've got Brazil, Argentina, the big players, but you have Colombia, Paraguay, Uruguay, Venezuela, Chile, Bolivia, and also we have not recorded, but some of the CA here, which is perennial tree-based systems, they really these are arable statistics, so they are not they don't include the statistics of your region. I would like to conclude hope for the future. Broad conclusions. CA-based production system of all kinds have all been shown to raise income and livelihood of small farmers. I have a publication here, 38 cases from Paraguay, small farmers, and you must read this. Case studies, heart-rending case studies. The only difference is that they were shown by government program to practice conservation agriculture. And that is the difference, that they have now a system approach to agriculture practice and not this mythical black box, miracle variety, when can I get my miracle fertilizer approach. CA is applicable to most agro-ecosystem and all cropping and land systems using locally formulated adapted practices by small farmers. CA system can rehabilitate degraded and abandoned land, growing support by donor, government, NGO, development organization for farmer-led scaling, not farmer-centered. It should be farmer-led so that you get an innovation environment working together with professionals. So we are into good stead here. CA is increasingly recognized by research organizations as a viable approach. CIMMYT is a good example, although views differ, but essentially CIMMYT has a global program on conservation agriculture. Why? Because they see something different here. So research organization, Embrapa now, having fought CA for many years, is now a promoter of CA. More policy and institutional support is needed for faster adoption and within the community-based situation with all the constraints we were listening to yesterday. But in Central America, where small farmers operate on marginalized hillsides for survival, secure land tenure is going to be important, whether you like it or not. That's important for everybody, for livelihood, for me, for you. And community-based watershed development is absolutely necessary. Development programs to include all stakeholders, the haciendas as well, like Brazil has managed to do in most cases, not all, but have to be brought together, must be promoted to harness local and larger scale CA benefit in productivity, livelihood and ecosystem services for all. And I think if I had to offer some development goals for discussion, then I think there would be these. Government support for new paradigm within watershed management and community development framework must be mobilized. There is no, and we have an ex-minister here who is fully on board, and he tells me that we have a window now in Central America, in many Central American countries, where agriculture and environment are coming together for real action, for livelihood development action. So we have corporate land users to support and adapt the new CA-based paradigm. The haciendas have to adopt this. Otherwise, they will be screwing up the ecosystem services in a major way. And you can't then repair it. Some of the pictures we saw, you can't repair that damage. Farmer associations of various types must be encouraged to adopt CA for economies of scale, capturing economies of scale, for land intensification, and so forth. And of course, equipment and machinery for all farmers, including smallholder, is necessary, and they are available. The best ones in the world are from Latin America. They are just lying few thousand, 100 miles down south. And smaller, and land stabilization on hillside is an imperative. You can't farm on the hillside without that. Support structure for research, education, capacity building for CA system in all agricultural land use must now be established as a mainstream strategy. And I think if we do that, then we have an agriculture of the future, and we have the future of agriculture under our management and accountability. I'm awfully sorry I took so long. Do forgive me, and I'm happy to answer a question. I run a small global platform to make sure everybody is connected, information is flowing. I do it on a voluntary basis. Anybody who would like to join, just go on the website here, this website, and join, and you will begin to receive information from all different parts of the world who are on CA practices. Thank you so much. Thank you.